Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast for military and veterans. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, and provide value and solutions to help make life more abundant. Welcome back to another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here. Today's guest is Michael McElroy. He is number 5 of 7 children in the McElroy family, born and raised in Diamond, Kentucky. He moved out on his own he moved out on his own at 17 to live in Seattle, Washington, where he went on to join the Navy prior to September 11th and 13 or so years prior to repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Don't Pursue policy. Now retired from a 20-year Navy career, he now lives in Evansville, Indiana, where most of his family now resides. Michael, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Obi-Wan.
For reference, he was my RDC in boot camp. My last name sounded similar to Obi-Wan, and so that was my nickname, which actually followed me with a few people that I went to boot camp with, literally still to this day. But I love it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for that. But anyway, I'm going to pass it off to you to share your story, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
All right. So, just so the intro did say that I moved to Seattle, Washington. So I'm from an extremely small town, and actually the county is called Webster County, Kentucky. And so the high school that I was going to had maybe 400 people there in the totality of the high school. Needless to say, I was one of the only LGBT people, visible LGBT people at that school during that time. And my freshman year was 1997. So, life was very strange and different back then. I was experiencing some negative things being in school there. The last thing that I had experienced was that I got stabbed in the face with a screwdriver. And I was like, to that point, so much bullying, so much this, so much that. There was my brothers and sisters were the only people of color at that school. And also on top of that, I was gay. And I acknowledged that I was gay. And I acknowledged that, I was different from these people. And so after the incident, me getting stabbed in the face with a screwdriver, a lot of people would probably cringe about that, but that was my second time getting stabbed. So it took me 2 times getting stabbed and spit on a weekly basis, all sorts of crazy stuff happening. I knew something was going to happen to me or I was going to do something to myself. So I made the decision to move to Seattle, Washington alone. I just saved my money for however long, and I just moved to Seattle, Washington, and enrolled myself in school, finished, graduated summa cum laude, and walked into the recruiting station. Nobody was joining prior to September 11th. Nobody was running to the doors of the Navy recruiting station. I went up there and I said, if I can't leave today, I'm not joining. Everybody in the whole office was running in circles. They would say, oh, we got one. I'm like, yeah, I better leave today or I'm not going to join. But I ended up joining. They put me in a hotel room actually for 2 weeks in downtown Seattle. Walked around Seattle, this little kid, I turned 18 while I was right after I graduated. And, but I mean, still, I had never been outside of Kentucky before, but I knew that putting my life in jeopardy by being in a big city was better than me staying inside of this ecosystem of racism, bigotry, and so on and so forth. But I'm really glad I got to see that side of the table. I know what people are capable of, and I know what that demographic of people are capable of. And I knew how much I could tolerate when it came to a lot of things. A lot of people ain't been stabbed, but a lot of people can persevere. But I got all the way to get stabbed and I was still able to persevere, you know. Anyways, they put me in that hotel room for 2 weeks. And during that time, I can barely even remember the days. It was just so, like, during that time when you're experiencing a lot of trauma, you don't have the ability to be able to remember whether or not that trauma is coming from leadership or it's coming from the household you're in or whether it's coming from your community. The mind has this weird way of not allowing you to fully acquiesce all of those memories to, like, vividly. I'm not able to go back and, like, vividly remember things about my experiences that were inherently negative. So, anyways, I took a break from my family for about 2 years after I joined the Navy. So I joined the Navy in Seattle, did not communicate to anyone, got to boot camp. September 11th happened when I was in boot camp. They shut the base down, no graduation. So we didn't have a graduation. We just got put on buses and sent to A school. And the whole Navy had apparently changed. And I had an experience where during boot camp, my mom came on base because my dad was a retired Vietnam veteran and he knew somebody who knew somebody and got on base. And my RDC came up to me and said, "Seaman Recruit McElroy, why is your mom on the aft brow?" Can you fucking imagine that? I'm a seaman recruit and my mom is on the aft brow wondering why the watch would not let her on. And she barely speaks English. So my mom's Filipino and my dad's Black from Kentucky. My mom's from the Philippines. So it was just a crazy experience that I had with that whole boot camp thing. As I joined the Navy, I signed a piece of paper that said, no homosexuals will join the military. You will not do this if you see something or say something, you know, all this stuff. You will not be this and that. And I was like, okay, you know, I was willing to put that portion of my life, like, it wasn't important to me. I grew up in a small community. I didn't know that acknowledging 100%, like, allowing that part of myself to grow in a healthy way was important. I didn't know that back then. I was able to just say, oh, yeah, I don't need the gay stuff. Like, it's never helped me before. I've never utilized it before. I've never like had like experiences. I've never had a boyfriend. It's not important to me. And so I signed that paperwork with like a smile on my face. Yeah, fuck the gay shit. Yeah, put it on pause. And I did. And so as the time went on, like my first year in the military at my first command that was all male, and it was very common for there to be all male ships back then. I was on an all male ship. I had experiences, something similar to probably what jail would be like, because this is what the guys would say: it ain't gay if it's underway. And you probably heard that saying before. And when I tell you that came from an all-male Navy, like there's so much stuff. The military has such a colorful, real history that we do not talk about. And there's no issues with it. Yeah, there was LGBT people all in the military. It was probably the only reason I got capped to first class was because of the LGBT person in higher ranks. And I'm not going to say that person's name, but that's probably the only reason I got meritoriously advanced. I've been meritoriously advanced 3 times. And it takes somebody of a particular character to say, okay, I know he's not going to make it any other way because of the experience he's having. He's not able to really be able to be inside this environment that the Department of Defense has created for him. If I was just heterosexual, I would have had a totally different experience. My sister is a commander. why would I not be a commander? We come from the same area. We're both intellectuals. We both have extreme leadership skills. We were both raised by the same retired chief petty officer. I should be in the officer's country too. It's just they were not ready for me. And I remember at my first command, and I know this is haphazard, but it's like relevance in the history versus the past is very much my way of storytelling. But I remember when a warrant officer walked up to me at my first command, and I was a E1 at the time. I've never been an E2 or E3. I was an E1 and got meritoriously advanced to E4. So I've never been an E3 either. So E1 all the way to E4, and then E4, E5, E6, like meritorious advancements. But anyways, this warrant officer told me, you see these people who are on this ship with me. He brought the midshipmen on board, the brand new officers that he was showing around to the ships, and every one of them were white. And he was like, I have a problem with this. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do about it? Like, what? He wanted me to do something about it personally. He felt as though, like, if I got inside of the officer community, which is probably true, if I got inside of the officers community and infiltrated the ranks as a gay multiracial man, that it would make the Navy a better place. To me, at that time in 2002, I couldn't see it. It made no sense to me. But him and all his wisdom, he felt it was necessary to direct that message towards me and some other people of color. And, sometimes I wish I would have taken his advice, because I've always felt as though my abilities outweighed my rank. And that was definitely apparent whenever I became an RDC. And there were people who outranked me who were asking me, how do you do this and you're not like in a bad mood? How do you do this? And I have this picture that I post on my Facebook of me in ranks with all the other RDCs, and every one of them have a frown on their face except for me. And it was just a candid picture. And I was actually happy to be seeing my recruits graduate every single time, because I'm a person and they are people. And I treated them like people. And I'm like, do you need to use the phone? Do you need this? What's going on with you? I'm going to take care of y'all. This is all a show. We're here to do the show. And you go to the military and you play the game. The whole thing is, should you really have honor, courage, and commitment? Yes, you should. But what does honor, courage, and commitment mean to those folks who are telling you to have it? And it's got to mean something to them in order for you to acquiesce and sit there and allow yourself to be inundated and taken over by this idea of the Navy and what the Navy does and its mission, So that got a little watered down for me, that honor, courage, and commitment, after maybe 2003, when every single one, hundreds and hundreds of my friends who were gay, who I met at gay clubs in Norfolk, Virginia and stuff, particularly this nightclub called The Wave, and they wouldn't mind me giving them a shout out. They used to do raids on that nightclub, block all the exits and see who had military IDs in there, and arrest everyone who was in there with a military ID or suspected of having a military ID. If you had the wrong haircut, you definitely could tell you were in the military with your haircut, you got taken in a little paddy wagon to the base, and then they rang you out to dry. Every one of my friends. The only reason I never got caught is because I had a Kentucky ID and a deep country accent, and they thought I was from Virginia. That's the only reason why I never got snatched up. But I got put in situations to where, the Department of Defense, the Navy, my honor, courage, and commitment, my family's idea of how I should live my life, my friend's idea of how I should live my life, it came to this crescendo of just negativity of I know I'm signing this paper so many times that, okay, I'm not gay, I'm not gay, I'm not gay. And I've signed it over 16 times. It's probably 20 times that I've signed this. Every time somebody got a feeling of something, then I've had to sign this piece of paperwork, oh, this and that or whatever, and I've signed it. And like, it just all came to this situation. I just had like this sort of like a anxiety, nervous breakdown sort of thing in the fucking Persian Gulf. I'm sitting over here at my rack, not able to process, not able to really, no, zero mentorship, zero anyone taking interest in whether or not my well-being was okay, no internet, letters, waiting for a fucking helicopter to drop a letter off from home from my Asian mother who barely speaks English, in her English, to say, hey, love you, have a good time, hope everything's okay. And I read her accent. I was so disconnected from actual reality in that experience because of, it was partly because of the don't ask, don't tell policy, and partly because of the dehumanization, like I was devalued. I was subhuman because of that. Like, just think of that person who annoys you most that you last worked with having power over you, over something insignificant like your lifestyle or your this or your skin color or you're Jewish or you're this or you're that. It's just, it's really, I really do not like working for idiots. And it's worse than working for an idiot to have everybody to have that much power over you. They can end your career at the drop of a hat. I've been pulled into conference rooms, questioned about what I did that weekend, questioned about this, questioned about that. And I still moved forward. I kept meeting people out in town who are like, you're the strongest person I know. You're so artistic. You're so real. You're so this. I got enough positive energy from outside of that my career that I was able to continue moving forward. And when they repealed the don't ask, don't tell policy, and I was on this ship, this ship that was in Japan, I was honestly annoyed. It gave people the opportunity to ask me questions that they were not allowed to ask me for 13 years. They weren't allowed to ask me these questions. So now they repealed the don't ask, don't tell policy. And apparently that also allowed everybody the opportunity to become supposedly gay nosy, not gay friendly, not LGBT friendly. They became LGBT nosy. And it was annoying. And I'm glad I went to that. I went to go be an RDC after they repealed the don't ask, don't tell policy. I got annoyed with the fleet. And like, if I was an RDC, I was like, okay, there's only so many RDCs on base, and there's only so many people who could ask me these questions and do this and do that. And the recruits better not fucking ask me this. So I went to, like, being an RDC was the first command I was ever at where I went to that command and there was no don't ask, don't tell policy. That was the first time I ever had a job where my sexuality was not in conflict with my ability to, do my job on a daily basis. Any questions?
I have a few questions actually. So there's a couple things that I know stood out to me when I was going through boot camp and you were my RDC. And I think one of the bigger ones was the way that recruits treated you. And I remember like several specific instances because I always had so much respect for you as my RDC. And several instances where people would make comments, like back-ended comments, and just say just like really rude things. And man, I remember like one time in particular, someone had said something and you brought them in the middle of our birthing area. And instead of ITing them like you normally would, you literally looked them in the face and you said, I don't want to IT you because it's going to make you better and it's not worth my time. And it literally broke my heart to pieces because I'm like thinking to myself, like, how many times have you heard these just like negative comments from people? And so I'm curious, from the time that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, till realistically even the time that you retired from the Navy, how many times did you just have to deal with constant negativity because of your sexuality?
Oh, so not zero of my recruits know this, and barely any of the Navy people who know me know this. That I had maybe 3 months left at Recruit Training Command. I had just received the Distinguished Leadership Award, which was very difficult to get at that time. And we had a meeting with the command, what is his name? Command Master Chief. Yeah, the Command Master Chief had a meeting with all first class petty officers. So he said at that meeting, if anybody has any questions or statements, I'll stay after to listen to them. And I said, I have a few things I want to talk about before I leave Recruit Training Command on a good note. Had a great time here. Everything's great. So I stayed behind and I said, that I had experienced some things as being a gay service member, the LGBT community. I have experienced and heard some things and experienced some things that he needs to be made aware of. So that way, since they're talking about, oh, they're ready for trans people to come join the Navy, I was like, no, the fuck y'all not. You're not. You weren't even ready for my boring gay ass. So he told me this. He said, I wish I had the little script. Anyways, he said, none of the other gay people are complaining. And I asked him, was there a gay meeting? Because last time I checked, I'm in charge of the gay bitches on this base. But I am the number one. Who are the other? Maybe there was at a maximum 6 gay RDCs, and half them were probably bisexual, and 2 of them were probably this and that or whatever. But I was the only feminine, gay, multiracial male on that base, period. And, poise and professionalism every single day. So when he said that, none of the other gay people were complaining. And I asked him whether or not there was a gay meeting. He asked me where I worked, and I told him where I worked at. And I said, and one other thing. I was like, people telling me this and that, I wore tinted moisturizer at the time. I wore makeup every single day of my Navy career. There's no policy on cosmetics for men. If you want a policy on cosmetics for men, put it in the regulations. But I didn't wear evening fucking makeup. I wore like classy ass. Nobody even knew I was wearing makeup. I wore like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Before they turn on Sports Center and they start talking about football, guess what? All those guys who are up there talking about it get their faces dusted with bare minerals and this and that because they're on TV. And last time I checked, Recruit Training Command is a show. It is a show. And I was on that show. I was the main character sometimes. So when he found out I had makeup on, he said, you wear makeup? And I was like, yeah, where you been? Like, where you been? I've been here. I've been in your face many times. Like, you've never like pulled me to the side and said, hey, why's your skin so nice? You've never did that. But anyways, he had me written up the next day, said I will no longer wear makeup and this and that. And I challenged this senior chief petty officer, lame duck session of Congress, senior chief petty officer. I'm not going to say her name. She knows who she is. Lame duck session of Congress. She wrote me up and told me that I could no longer. She said, just lighten it up a little bit, lighten it up, just lay it on a little light. I'm like, it's light. Do you, what do you want me to do? Like, it's not, like, you didn't even know I was wearing makeup. Like, nobody maybe there was 1 or 2 days where people knew I was extra snatched because it was graduation and I wanted to look extra snatched for y'all's parents. So they would be intimidated to walk up to me. But like, other than that, I never got nobody ever said anything about me wearing makeup. So, anyways, she wrote me up. Next thing you know, I asked for a meeting with him because I wanted to address the LGBT issue. And I pushed and pushed and pushed for this meeting. So in 3 days after that, I got to have a meeting with him. And I'm like, hey, just to let you know, like my whole family's in the Navy. Like we're all in the Navy. I have no issues with any of the policies that the Navy has, but I do know how to read. And if there's not instruction or policy on it, that means that it's just left to interpretation. So it did not say, and it does not say, that I am not allowed to wear certain things. If you want it to say that, then you need to write it up and send it up and let them make it. Nobody should be able to say, oh, it's implied. It's implied that you're not supposed to do this. It's implied that Black people are not usually officers. Did you know that? It's implied that like it's odd to see like a Black surgeon on a Navy ship. It's implied. So I don't like implied stuff. So like if you want to make it in black and white, by all means necessary, go make it in black and white so it can become reality. Because I'm not going to live your reality of this individual who was from wherever he was from, who had an opinion about how gay I was supposed to be, because that was the actual issue. And anyways, because like nobody would ever say, and this is what I told him. I said, when you said none of the other gay people are complaining, do you know what that sounds like? He says not, and this is what he said to cut me off. Not everybody is comfortable dealing with LGBT issues. I said, oh, excuse me. I said, Command Master Chief, with all due respect, could you imagine if I was a CMC and I came in here next week and said, I'm not dealing with no Jew shit this week. And I said, the next week, I'm going to come in and say, I ain't dealing with no nigga shit this week. I don't feel comfortable dealing with nigga shit this week. Could you imagine? Do you know what it means to say you don't feel comfortable dealing with LGBT issues? How disenfranchising that is to certain people? For you, the second person in power of this command, to say that you don't feel comfortable with those issues and you will allow somebody under your chain of command to deal with those issues for you because you don't value those people as people. And he said that to my face. I said, you know what? My dad went to Vietnam 2 times and survived in order to have me, and I joined the Navy. And I know I did not survive all those odds to be disrespected here in this office by you. And he had another supposedly LGBT chief in that office with us. And she's crying the whole time because nobody is as articulate as I am when it comes to serving your country as an LGBT person of color. She didn't know she was going to be crying, but she was crying because she ain't never stood up to the man like that. But I've stood up to the man my whole damn life. And the next thing you know, he cancels my orders to the USS. I'm not going to say the name of the ship I was supposed to go to. I was supposed to go to a different ship in a different location, cancels my orders. And the next thing you know, I have orders to a ship in the Persian Gulf, and I get flown to the Persian Gulf. And that is how I ended up getting to the command that I retired at. And I sent it all the way up to the Navy Inspector General, saying I was discriminated against and blah, 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 and this and that or whatever. And they acknowledged my discrimination and said it was only, there's some casual instances of discrimination. I don't know what casual discrimination is. It's Navy Inspector General, but I experienced casual discrimination. And I didn't even bring up all the totality of everything that I experienced there and then or whatever. But like for somebody so high up in the chain of command, the Navy Inspector General, to tell me that my account of the situation was flawed, or maybe I need to take a different perspective. Maybe I didn't really experience what I did experience. It was re-victimization. I was like, you know what? I'm done. People wanted me to be a chief. People want me to be this and that. And after that experience, I dedicated every ounce of my energy to junior sailors for the rest of my career to make sure they were okay, not that they had their qualifications, not that they were this, not that they were that. I was doing financial counseling, talking to folks all day, all night, letting people use the phone. I had a hookup with the telephone, and I would let people call their loved ones and their babies being born while we're in the, just stuff like that. I took care of sailors for the rest of my career, and that was actually the most fulfilling thing I could have did. I wish I could have stayed at Recruit Training Command for even longer because it was great, but nobody can do that job for that long. It's very demanding of the human body. And I had a great experience on my way out. Just received a text message today from one of my last proteges who's trying to buy a house, and I give him advice on like, oh, this is what you need to do and blah, 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 or whatever. But like, I found a path, even though they tried to destroy what they thought was my path that I was going for. They thought, like, since I was so Joe Navy, that like everything I live and die for is Navy, but it isn't. People call me today and they're like, how did you just retire and just leave and just you went about your business? And just like, I'm just so like lost. And I'm like, I was 75% in the Navy, maybe. They never let me buy the full Comcast package. I got the high-speed internet, and they was negotiating whether or not I could get cable TV and the landline. They were negotiating it, and I never got approval for the full package. So I've only been operating on high-speed internet this whole time.
So I have to ask, when it comes to your mindset, because not everyone has this rock solid mindset developed, and and maybe you have different personal views about it, but there's something that you said in boot camp that literally like is one of my like mantras till this day. And you had said to someone that you have to educate people, and if you educate them and they still treat you a certain way, that's when like they're being disrespectful. But you were like, people don't know. And it stood out to me so much because literally from like that point forward in my career in the Navy, it kind of took me a bit to cultivate it myself. But I had this focus on, if someone's treating me a certain way, I have to educate them and let them know. And then if I educate them and I let them know and they're still continuing to disrespect me, then there's an issue there. But obviously something developed this mindset that you had to be so almost like forgiving of people, like with the attitude of like, oh, they just don't know, let me tell them. And then, if I tell them and they still disrespect me, then I know they're disrespecting me. But even like beyond that, still continuing to operate your life on a day-to-day basis and not let that negativity really get to you. So I'm really curious, like how you got to that point.
So that is a very good one right there. So, like I said, I'm from Diamond, Kentucky, and this is what everybody says, oh, Southern hospitality. And you are a product of that environment that you do come from. The first things that I ever remember were hospitable people here. I remember our house burnt down, and a church we didn't even go to brought us all a bunch of like food and like clothing and this and that, like stuff that we would need. And that's a very small town situation to experience. There's no stoplights or convenience stores or anything in my town. My town has one stop sign, and maybe 70 people live there, maybe. there was as many nice people as there were negative people, I guess you could say. And that I learned how to be hospitable, how to be caring, how to be forgiving, how to really take a different vantage point for why is someone talking to you a certain type of way. I learned all that from all these interactions with everyone I've ever had in my entire life. And I just so happened to meet that right group of people who helped me develop like a good way of challenging negative situations and negative people. Um, Tara Lee Kilgore, my best friend here in Webster County. I was at school one day and this guy called me racial slurs and LGBT slurs, and she stabbed him in the head with an ink pen. We're best friends to this day, and she lives down the street. I got to my first command, and my best friend to this day, he currently works for the NSA, and he was a deck seaman, and people told him it was never going to be anything. And he works for the NSA now. He's in the United Kingdom. He gave me so many just things, just tidbits of this is how you're going to survive this, and just so many just tidbits of perfect personal information on how you're going to survive this. I needed him whenever I got to my first command, and Tyson Strong from my first command. We're friends to this day. So much information, so much like friendship, so much fellowship from him. When he came back from Iraq, because he left the Navy to join the Army, and he became an officer in the Army, just so much like he needed me as much as I needed him back then. It's everything is full circle like that. And I definitely like to look at everything in full circle like that. When I was stationed in Japan, Ryan Keller, who just came to visit me last weekend for Halloween, we're best friends to this day. He gave me so much information, so much friendship, so much fellowship. I was able to continue to cultivate all those good things about my nature. I was never sullied. I was never soiled by all these negative people who came into my life, which strangely enough prepared me. All those people and there's even many, many, many more people helped prepare me for when I did become an RDC. And being an RDC, I don't know how other people take it, but you are you are part of the beginning stages of someone's military career. Do you know how important that is? Do you know how serious I took that job on a daily basis? I looked in the mirror and was like, I am not going to negatively impact someone's life or career. If I am doing that, I'm going to let them know the reasons why they're being spoken to a certain type of way or whatever. But I took that job every single hour, minute of every single day of my baby recruits on their way into the fleet. I took it so seriously. And I know most of them did know that I was taking it that seriously. And the ones that didn't know, God help them, but I did the best that I could. And I really took the job seriously. And so for the command master chief of that command to not acknowledge all the effort that I put into that job, and then to send me to the Persian Gulf. I ain't asked to go to no Persian Gulf for my last command, right? Nobody goes anywhere for their last command prior to retirement of 20 years of service. They don't ask, oh, I'm going to spend my last few days in the Persian Gulf. Yeah, they got me real good, but joke's on them. I've been gay this whole time. Have a great life.
Did you ever seek any kind of like mental health assistance when you're in the Navy, or did you always just rely on your own personal fortitude to get you through tough situations?
Okay. So when I was at RDC and they told me I was going to the Persian Gulf and they stripped me of all my qualifications. So my last 3 months there, they took my red rope, they took all my qualifications, they cut my pay, no NJP for wearing makeup. They took all my money, they took my qualifications, and they took my red rope and they put me in a little crappy job for 3 months until I got sent off to the Persian Gulf for wearing makeup. So, and not even disgusting makeup, classy makeup, because I'm a classy guy. Then, yes, you know what? I was like, you know what? And then my dad passed away and they would not let me go home. And I only lived 4 hours away from home. I could have drove home. Well, more like 5 hours. I could have drove home. And I was like, so like honor, courage, commitment, Navy lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm not going to just drive home. I'm going to wait for this leave chit and I'm going to wait for acknowledgement from the command. And I could have drove home 2 or 3 times. And my dad ended up passing away that night. And they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. You can go home now. And I was like, you know, I can never forgive y'all for this. Like, I can never forgive myself. I should have just left. Because it's not like y'all handed me paperwork. Y'all just called me and said, oh, you can go. You can just go ahead, you know. When that situation happened, yes, I went to take a 4-week stress management course. I took one. Yes, the command said I could not go home while my father was in hospice. And I let them know he is in hospice. I know how important this job is. And I'm asking permission rather than just leaving like a regular human being should. You know, I spent a lot of time with my father. He called me all the time. I talked to him all the time. I called him all the time. So I don't really feel like there's something I missed, but it still is the everybody wants to be there when a loved one passes away. That's just a human nature of this life. So, anyways, I could never forgive them for that. And I had sort of a fracture and needed to take this course. And I took a stress management course and we did yoga and we talked about mindfulness and we talked about what are our stressors and this and that. And that's what I did for my last month of service at Recruit Training Command. So I took that last month from them and gave it to myself and went to my stress management course because they couldn't deny me to go to that. Like I signed up for it. And I was like, hey, y'all figure it out. What I was doing, y'all can take care of that. And I'm going to do this and do that. Yeah. And my last year of the Navy, I stayed no later than 12:30. I would just leave the ship. I just left. And they were like, hey, did you go home? I said, I sure did. I'm retiring. They're like, oh, do you have an appointment or something? I'm like, no, I'm retiring and I'm taking time to myself to figure me and my life out because I've already done this for 20 years. And mind you, this ensign who had the audacity to call me had only been in the Navy for maybe 36 hours, as far as I know. But it was probably longer than that. But I'm just saying, he was an ensign and he was 20 some odd years old. Here I am. I know you think don't know, but I was like, sir, I'm 39 years old. And I know you don't feel like I'm 39 years old because I don't look like you, because he looked like a dead body and he was only 20 something years old. Uh, I have to take time to myself to retire and make sure I am good to go. And because I took that time to myself, I was able to get my VA done for my disability and get all my paperwork taken care of. And I actually retired 4 months early because I took a course and took my 4 months from the Navy. So I retired 4 months early. Thank you.
So, do you feel that for the LGBT community
Mm,
that the
mm.
Navy offers to this day, or even, more recently when you're in, do you feel that the Navy offers resources for this particular community?
Okay, so when I left the Navy, that would be a no. That would be a no for me. So I know I was a resource just by happenstance, being there, experiencing that, and coming from the LGBT group. But like, I can tell you this, only less than 1% of leadership understands the appropriate way to properly cultivate someone from the LGBT community into a leader. I'm probably the only one who could probably do that in the whole fleet, because there is a certain approach you take to leadership. There are people whose hands are held all the way up until the top, and before you know it, girl's a first class. Oh Lord, how she? Oh boy, is a chief now. Blah blah blah. Yeah, they have their hands held tightly by somebody in that upper chain of command. And unless the same thing can happen for my LGBT brothers and sisters, then it's not a possibility. You just accidentally make it to the top. And there is no such thing. And you probably in your entire Navy career have never seen a feminine male in charge of stuff. That's not a thing. Yeah. And that I was an affront to everything that they held near and dear. It wasn't until my last year that a chief said, "We need you in the chief mess." And I'm like, I knew that 10 freaking years ago. I knew that because there's always been gay people in the military. They just named a ship after a gay person in the military, And I'm like, yeah, I know that. Y'all don't know how to lead. Y'all, it's not only that y'all don't know how to lead young gay folks. Y'all don't know how to lead young folks, period. Y'all don't know how to talk to people. And I'm glad I got pushed out of that leadership thing. I wasn't able to get brainwashed by like, oh, this is what we want our leadership to be like type thing. I was able to develop my own personal leadership style, and it worked very, very good for me. And all I did was help develop sailors here, there, straight, gay, whatever you were. If you had a problem, I was going to take care of it for you. And I still have to look at myself in the mirror and be like, okay, take care of your own problems now. Let some people need to crash and burn, but I really don't enjoy watching people crash and burn. So I try to help as many people as possible. So that was an over expansion on your question, but to simplify it, no, they don't know. And I'm not saying there's not good gay leadership out there, but there's just not. There isn't. You would know about it. You would have seen it. You would have felt it. You would have heard of it. Maybe if they're at the naval hospitals, maybe they're in personnel. Who knows? I've never seen them. I've never have.
So obviously this is a massive culture issue within the Navy. Super mindful of your time here. So I'm going to ask you one final closing question. And if you were in charge of the Navy, what would you do to make things better for the LGBTQ community?
Okay. And so I'm glad you said that, the LGBT community. And even me, as somebody who's from the LGBT community, right? I still help straight sailors too, as much, if not more, than I was helping gay sailors. I help everyone. So, like, that way that I could see sailors as mine, how I would try to help people who are in leadership positions be able to develop that ownership of these human beings who are under your care, because they are humans first. This is not an E1. This is not an E5 right here. This is a person who goes home. This is a person who goes to walk their dog. This is a person who likes time off to be able to take care of their business. I used to have this sailor who he was taking care of some stuff and he wanted to become a SEAL and he wanted to do this. And so I made him like in charge of his own time. And he did way more stuff than I would ever expect a sailor to do, because I said, you know what, when you're working, you're in charge of when you're here and how often you do this, but I better not see anything falter as far as like this, what you're in charge of making sure you're in charge of. And he never failed me to this day. He knows who I'm talking about with me even saying that. But I let him be a free agent, and I wish I would have did that more throughout my career. Just let people, hey, manage your people's time and manage your time. You know when it's time for this person to do this. You know when it's time for this person to do that. And one thing the military is very good at is hurry up and wait, and sitting there and waiting for somebody to tell you you can get off. And people are afraid to let people go. I was not about that life. I was about the life of, y'all are people and I'm a person. There's times when I need to go and I want somebody who's going to handle stuff, who would handle it just the way I would, because they respect me that much. And the only way they're going to respect me that much is if I give them the time to develop themselves and their families. They have families. They do have these things in their life. They have a whole life. You cannot make somebody's life the Navy. You can't do that to a person. You're an actual person, human being. So to rehumanize the lower ranks, to see them as people, that is what I would help leadership do, and understand that these are people we are talking to and raising and leading, and we should talk to them from that place, not from my rank, not from because I'm a chief, I told you so, because I'm a commander, because I'm a this, I'm a that. That shit got old in 1996, and I'm tired of hearing it, really.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen in today. Each week, I'll be bringing you value in the mental health space and its direct impact on service members and veterans. If you feel you personally got value today from this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a 5-star rating and review and share this to your audience. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.